We got all kinds of fun stuff coming up on today's podcast, so stay tuned. I'm Chuck Holton, and you're watching The Hot Zone.
This is The Hot Zone. Engaging with the news in a whole new way, international war correspondent Chuck Holton brings insight into areas of crisis and lets you help those affected.
Hey folks, it's Chuck Holton here. I know it looks like the world is kind of crooked behind me, and that's because I'm kind of sitting on the back hillside behind my mom's rental house. She owns a house here in West Virginia that she uses for passive income, and with her struggling with this cancer and everything, I just came up, spent a few extra days after covering the hurricane to kind of help get it in shape with Amy and Nathan, a couple of my kids. That it's a house that was built back in the 40s, real solid, but just needed some tender love and care. And so I'm spending the week up here painting and pressure washing and fixing and more painting and more cleaning and stuff like that. So here it is, like 7:30, and I haven't done the podcast yet. I just realized that. But, there's a lot of stuff going on. The first thing we need to talk about is it's gotten a lot of press, actually, and that's the fact that Donald Trump apparently called off the negotiations with the Taliban over pulling U.S. troops out of Afghanistan. And I did a live broadcast about that today on CBN, and just talked a little bit about my experience a couple weeks ago when I was over in Afghanistan. First of all, the Afghans, by and large, don't like the Taliban. Now, some of the Afghans obviously are the Taliban, but presumably they like the Taliban. But the people in the cities especially, they don't want to go back to that. They don't want to go back to living in the 6th century. There has been a lot of modernization that has come about in Afghanistan since even the last time I was there 5 years ago. And this time there are, 17-story buildings, lots of modern construction. There are lots and lots, as I mentioned while I was over there, you see a lot of women now that are walking the streets without a burqa on. That's a big deal. I mean, think about that. The American soldier, sailor, airman, guardsman, Marine, whatever, has spent the last 18 years safeguarding the rights of women in that country. I know that a lot of people on the regressive left like to talk about how, Christianity keeps women down, and, that they just want women to be barefoot and pregnant all the time, and they don't want them to be feminist, liberated. We get a lot of flack from the quote-unquote feminists just for traditional Christian beliefs. But in fact, traditional Christian beliefs is that we should honor our neighbor as ourselves. We should love each other. We should care for one another. We should put other people ahead of ourselves. I'm not sure what's so bad about that. I've never understood how Christians can get so much flack for adhering to a religion that basically says love people, be nice to people, treat people like you'd like to be treated. And I just don't understand what's so bad about that. But when you look at a place like Afghanistan that has had a Muslim culture for thousands of years, and their culture indeed has been, the Afghan culture is actually many cultures, but those cultures have been around for 6,000 years. And they don't progress. They don't build things. They don't fix things. They don't get better. They stay right where they are because in their culture, sticking your head up and trying to improve your station is kind of an affront to Allah. It's kind of a slap in the face to God, saying, I don't like the way you made me, so I'm going to try to make myself better. And so you're very discouraged, highly discouraged in that culture to improve or to do things better than they were done before, or to make things any better than they are now. So consequently, as I've pointed out many times, Their culture doesn't have light bulbs, by and large. Especially, you get out of the cities, they don't have electricity. They don't have running water in their homes. They don't have toilets. They actually use the toilet out in the front yard like a dog would, really. They don't really even sleep in beds. They kind of put their bedding up on top of the house at night. And I guess that's smart because it's super hot, and that any place higher is cooler, but still, these are people that don't build paved roads. They don't. They just don't progress in the traditional sense at all, and they certainly don't progress in things like the rights of women. So they had I remember one time when I was there, they had an election, and women were allowed to vote technically, but not very many women actually did vote. And we were on a raid, and there were some families there that we were safeguarding. The U.S. Special Forces guys we were with, they were safeguarding. And I was asking them through the translator, about, did you vote in the election? And the women said, no, of course not, we didn't vote. And I said, why not? You can. And they said, why would we vote? We're women. Our men make the decisions. And I said, well, okay. But you see now, women actually taking the lead, women serving in politics, women policemen, women pilots in Afghanistan. Those are things that weren't possible before the U.S. came. And you might say, well, yeah, that's great, but why are we spending American blood and treasure to make Afghan culture any better? Why do we care what their culture is? Well, because by making their culture better, by making their culture more civilized, hopefully they will behave in a more civilized fashion, and they won't be so supportive of 6th century assassins and barbarians who cut people's heads off. Maybe they're not going to go for that so much because they've got internet now and they can see how the rest of the world lives. That is not a bad thing, and it is not bad for America. So has it been worth it for us to go over there? I say it's been worth it for two reasons. Number one, it's been worth it on the principle of the thing. You support people who come and attack us, we're going to come wipe out your country. Thank you very much. We need to set that precedent for the world. We need to let people know you've got no better friend and no worse enemy than the United States of America. And we will go to any lengths and spend any amount of money for 18 years to teach you the lesson that you better not mess with us. And so I think that's good. Now, the other thing is, like I said, hopefully we're leaving behind a more civilized Afghanistan that will be less likely to allow their leadership to support terrorists, and that remains to be seen. But we can hope. And I did say today that the men and women that I talked to when I was in Afghanistan certainly felt like what they were doing was worthwhile. I think we forget sometimes. We talk about, we need to bring all the troops home now. Well, all the troops that are there are volunteers. They volunteered to go there. At least the ones I talked to, they want to be there. They feel like they're doing good work while they're there. They feel like it's worthwhile. And I think we have enough people willing to volunteer to go that if we're willing to let them be there, that they can do good for America by keeping a check on terrorism in that region and on Iran. Keep in mind, Iran is a real threat globally, and we need to keep them in check. And so having troops in Iraq and in Afghanistan on both sides of Iran is important, and we need to have them there for the foreseeable future. And so I said today on the thing that they say war is politics by other means, and politics is war by other means. I mean, the fact that Donald Trump was talking about meeting with the Taliban at Camp David, personally, I think that's kind of insane. You don't let our sworn enemies set foot on the land that they attacked. But Donald Trump has a history of treating barbarians like they're civilized in hopes, I believe, of getting them to become civilized. I think that might be a fool's errand in the case of Kim Jong-un or the Taliban, but you can't fault a guy for trying. And in fact, the left would fault a guy for doing that or for not doing that. It doesn't matter what he does. He's going to get flack from the media. And so I think at this point, many Americans just sort of write the media off and go like, we don't care if they say it's bad, we don't believe them. If they say it's good, we don't believe them, because they're going to say everything Donald Trump does is bad. Even if he does two diametrically opposed things within the same week, they'll say both of those are bad. They'll change their minds because in their minds and the minds of the left, nothing, you cannot give Donald Trump credit for anything he does, which is really sad. I mean, look, I had a lot of issues with Barack Obama, and I felt like his leadership was feckless and limp-wristed, and I think he did a lot of damage to America in a lot of ways. But when he sent the Navy SEALs in to take out those Somali pirates that took over the ship, a U.S. ship, a captain ship off the coast of Somalia, many of you may have seen that movie. It was Captain Phillips, whatever. When he sent the SEALs in there to deal with those guys and just take them out, I gave him credit for that. Obviously, you got to give him credit for allowing the guys to go in and get Osama bin Laden. Hey, give credit where credit is due. I don't believe any of our leaders, even Barack Obama, have been malevolent. And that is, determined to destroy America. I think that they can be deceived. I think that they can be depraved, and they very much are in many cases. And that spans both sides of the aisle. But we have to give credit where credit is due. And I think I would like to see a more reasonable discourse when it comes to our politics. And I'm sure many of you would as well. Okay, let's move on. There was a really bad accident in Morocco that, I don't know if you heard about this, but a bus flipped over in a flood and like a bunch of people died. Take a look at this. So apparently 14 people were killed and 29 injured, and there might still be some missing. Authorities are looking for people that got washed away. Apparently this bus tried to cross a bridge that was flooded out or something and got flipped over by the flood. Very bad idea. I've often said that about the most dangerous thing you can do when it comes to international travel is to take public transport in third world countries. Public transport in third world countries is a death wish waiting to happen. And there are probably other ways you could get killed, but that's probably one of the cheapest ways, at least, you could get yourself killed in third world country. Get on a bus, get on a local bus. Jeez. Okay, there's more happening with Dorian. Obviously, the death toll is rising in the Bahamas. That's really bad. The U.S. Coast Guard and Border Patrol and that sort of thing are still there rescuing people and helping people get out. There are lots and lots of NGOs there as well. Operation Blessing is still on the ground and doing great work. They rented a yacht and they're able to put a lot more weight worth of supplies on there and ferry people back and forth. It's only 60-something miles to Florida. And so I don't know. I think they're probably taking people to Nassau, not Florida, which is even closer. And Nassau didn't really get hit by the storm. But boy, there's still a lot of devastation. I'm sure you're seeing all that on the news. So, we won't belabor that point. Okay, and now for about the craziest thing that I've seen all week. A couple of elephants wearing like pajamas went crazy at a festival in Sri Lanka and injured 18 people. And if you're watching the podcast, I'm going to show the footage here of these elephants just going crazy in this big parade and just bowling people over. I mean, look out. Get out of the way of those elephants, man. Holy cow. I mean, getting stepped on by an elephant is a great way to ruin your weekend. But the elephants weren't content just to stampede over people. You can see them there with their trunks just thwacking people like they're golf balls. And that's really, really exciting. So the people that went to see that parade got a whole lot more than they paid for, I'm sure. But man, there's stuff like that happening all over the world, and we only know just a little piece of it. And I guess that's why maybe sometimes it feels kind of hopeless when you hear about bad things happening. You feel like, gosh, there's just stuff happening everywhere, and I can't do anything to make it better. Well, I'm doing my best to get to all the places where bad things are happening and to give you a chance to actually take part in making things better and see what happens to your money. Because if it's coming to me and I'm going somewhere and we're going to find people in need and actually give it to them. And actually right here in West Virginia, you know, the opioid crisis is absolutely out of control. I've been told that something like half of all the people that my buddy Timo stops on the road, stops on the road, are either drug users or drug addicts or they're just, the number of people that are suffering from the opioid epidemic here in West Virginia is absolutely off the charts. And so today, while we were working up here on my mom's house, a guy showed up, obviously an addict, hungry, and needed some money to finish paying his rent so he didn't get kicked out. And you know, that can start kind of a downward spiral. So I didn't just give him some money, I gave him a job. And he worked for me for a couple hours. And so pray for Sean. Sean needs Jesus. He needs a lot of help. And I hope that he can find a way to get out of that spiral of death and destruction. He said that his sister had overdosed on heroin, and I hope he doesn't follow her. So anyway, I'm going to be praying for Sean. I hope you will too. Also be praying for my mom. Just a progress report. She is doing better after 4 rounds of chemo. Started her 5th round today, had a scan, and I guess the scan went pretty well. The tumors are shrinking. They're not going to cure pancreatic cancer, but at the very least, this protocol she's on should be able to extend her life, and we're grateful for that because we want to have as much time with her as we can. So thanks for watching The Hot Zone, folks. Thanks for being part of this family. So we'll be back again tomorrow, and thanks for watching. I'm Chuck Holton. Bye.
The Hot Zone is produced by Amy Holton and Livefire Media. Copyright 2019.